Hi, my name is Judy Van Koyman, and you're watching Life Issues. This month's show is about children's issues, and my guest is Anita Preble. Some of you might recognize Anita. She has been on the show before. Actually, it was 6 years this month. Welcome, Anita, again.
Hi, Judy. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. Anita, what is your occupation and title?
I'm a school adjustment counselor at the Cumming School here in Winthrop. I work with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders.
Okay. What is the adjustment counselor?
An adjustment counselor is a school social worker. It's a little different than a guidance counselor. Sometimes people mix up the two. A guidance counselor is someone who's more focused on academics, kids' schedules, what courses they're taking, how they're doing in classes, any special accommodations they might need, and helping them get ready for college. An adjustment counselor is focused on social and emotional health of the children, behavioral concerns, children who might have anxiety or who have various issues that come up in their lives that they need help with.
Okay. And how long have you been doing that?
I've been working here in this system for it'll be 14 years this year.
Wow.
Prior to that, I worked as a daycare social worker in Lowell, Mass. for 12 years.
Okay, and you founded the Winthrop Parents Network. When did you start that?
The Winthrop Parents Network started in 2010, so this is the 8th year. And it's a program which is focused on early literacy and parenting issues. It's funded by the Department of Early Education and Care, a grant that is processed through the Winthrop Public Schools. And right now we're located at the Cumming School. We provide learn and play groups, which are like Mommy and Me groups, where the parent or guardian or caregiver attends the play group with the child. And half of the time is socializing for the parents and the children, and half of the time is like a preschool, where they sit in a circle and they do a story, and then they do an activity with the parent. It helps kids get ready for school, for those children who aren't involved in formal preschool programs. We also do family nights every month, which are geared towards children in the kindergarten to 3rd grade age group. And each month we have a different topic. One month we usually do a word bingo night. Another night we might do yoga and stress management. And of course, our big event every year is the International Night, which is held in December and was a huge success this year with almost 250 people in attendance.
Wow.
And we had 16 countries represented. We had a drummer from Ghana playing the drums in the background. It was just a great event, and a lot of families who don't normally attend school functions because of language barriers and other concerns will come to the International Night and socialize and really show their food from their culture and various items and the clothing and so forth, and it's just so educational and so much fun.
Is it just for the school children and the families, or is it open to the
It's
public?
open to the community, but we do kind of target the 2 elementary schools primarily as far as families to be involved in the event. We've been doing a lot of great things. Just most recently, we collaborated with the Cumming School on a Dinner with a Gentleman event last Friday night, and students were encouraged to bring dad or grandpa or an uncle or somebody, male role model in their family with them, and we had a fancy dinner set up in the gymnasium with like a buffet, and we had tablecloths and little battery-operated candles and things. We had music, and the children were up dancing, and we had raffle prizes. We raffled a bike, and
Wow.
it was just wonderful. We had 248 people at the event, and everybody gave us rave reviews. The food was delicious. It was catered by the Mount Vernon in Somerville. And it had, we had chicken fingers and mac and cheese and, kid-friendly foods, but salad and things too. And everybody just said it was so much fun, and we're definitely going to do that again next year.
Oh, cool.
Part of my grant is about encouraging families to be involved with the school in the education of their child, and a lot of times it's moms that come to the events, and this time we try to encourage dads to come and get involved and do something with their child, and it was really special.
Yeah, that's good. Dads are important, like you said, the moms usually are the ones that come to the events and stuff, but having dads too involved It's very important.
Absolutely. The guest speaker was Greg Hennings, who's running for district attorney, and he spoke about the importance of male role models in a child's life. You know, even if a child doesn't have a dad in the home, you know, an uncle or grandfather or even an older brother can take on that role for the child and show that they're really invested in that child's education and, you know, making sure that they're staying on track.
And you head up all types of workshops. Can you please tell us what some of them are?
Some of the things I do are trainings at various child care programs, after-school programs. The trainings are primarily on mental health issues in children. The staff at these various programs, and sometimes I do parenting workshops as well. The staff are required by the state to have a certain number of training hours every year. And so I will go to the different locations and talk to them about perhaps autism, or talk to them about, you know, positive discipline techniques, or child abuse. Or this week I'm doing a training on the effects of trauma on child's learning, things like that. Those are the kinds of trainings that I do, and I've been doing that for about 13 years.
Wow, good. And I'd like to talk more about kids being bullied, which is still a very important topic out there. Can you please give us the definition of bullying?
Well, bullying is something that is one person is doing to another. It could be verbal, it could be social, it could be cyberbullying, or it could be physical bullying, which is what most people think of when they think of bullying. And the definition requires that it's something that is repeated, which means it's happening over and over again in spite of the child asking the person to stop, or an adult telling the child to stop. And there has to be some sort of imbalance of power. Either the bully is bigger, older, maybe it's a group of children or teenagers who are picking on somebody, and this child doesn't feel like they can really fight back in any way, or they don't know what to do. It's different from conflict. A lot of times kids will say, oh, so-and-so's bullying me because they called me a name. And then when I talk to them about it, I find out that they had some sort of a conflict. They were playing a game, they didn't agree on the rules, and one child got angry and called the other kid a name. That's not bullying. That's a conflict. And when you sit the two kids down, usually can come to some kind of agreement, and an apology is in order, and then, you know, they can move on. Bullying is different in that it's that person, the child who's being targeted, doesn't feel like they can really that they did anything wrong in the first place, or they may not even have had a relationship with this other person. And we would never sit a bully and a target down together to talk. It's just not appropriate. We would talk to them separately. So it's handled a little bit differently as well.
Okay. And schools have an anti-bullying policy. What is that?
In May of 2010, the state of Massachusetts passed a law about bullying, and the law requires that every school have an anti-bullying policy and have guidelines about how they handle bullying incidences. They have to keep track and also report that back to the state on a yearly basis. And so what happens is when some kind of an incident occurs, the child is referred to the assistant principal, who investigates the situation and keeps track of what happened. And if it becomes a repeated thing where she's seeing the same child coming up over and over for the same types of behaviors, then, you know, after extensive investigation, it may be deemed bullying, and then it would be filed as such. And consequences are much stiffer for bullying behavior than they are for, you know, an incident where a child lost their temper perhaps and did something inappropriate.
Okay. And what are 8 helpful tips about bullying?
Well, some of the things that we tell kids to do when somebody is bullying them or just bothering them or annoying them in some other way, sometimes kids think they're just teasing, you know, and the child who's being teased doesn't think it's funny. They get upset. And so sometimes we could just tell the bully or the person who's doing it, hey, that's not okay, that this person doesn't like it, or it's hurting their feelings, and that might be enough to stop it. But a lot of times, you know, if the purpose of that behavior is to really get that person going, get that child upset, then we usually tell the children, first thing you want to do is let them know you don't really care. I'll tell kids to either ignore it or to say something like, I don't care what you think, or whatever, something to sort of show that it's not bothering them. Because if a bully is out to get somebody, they're looking for a reaction. And if the child doesn't give a big reaction or seems unfazed by the behavior, then they're not going to continue doing it. That's hard for kids to do. Another thing we'll tell them is to make sure they have friends around them, so that there's safety in numbers, and if that person starts to bother them, they have friends with them to stick up for them. We tell them to tell an adult right away when something like that happens and they don't feel like they can stand up for themselves for whatever reason. If they feel unsafe, if the bullying is threatening harm or actually physically putting their hands on them, clearly an adult needs to intervene. So we encourage kids to come right away to an adult. I think some kids, especially older students, are able to sort of twist it around and maybe make a joke or sort of give it right back to them or something like that. But younger kids have a harder time with that. So we generally tell them avoid the person. Don't if you see them over there, don't go over there. Go somewhere else to play. And we just really encourage them to tell somebody if they're being bothered or if they're being threatened or in any way victimized. If they're online, if it's online, social media is a big problem, even at the elementary school, which you wouldn't think that 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, they're not supposed to be on Facebook or any of these social media sites, but they get on. They put, fake birthdays, or they use someone else's account or whatever, and, they can get themselves into situations that they don't really understand what's going on. And so even if it's happening outside of school, obviously we would talk to the parents, and the parents could handle it. If they feel like their child's being targeted online, they can speak to the police department. But if it's carrying over to school and it's continuing to be a problem in school as a result of what happened online, then the school will get involved in terms of trying to figure out what's going on and getting the parents involved in whatever needs to happen.
Oh, that's good. Good. That it can be handled. And what are the 4 common types of bullying?
The 4 main types of bullying are physical bullying, which would be hitting and attacking somebody that way or threatening to harm somebody. Social bullying, which would be like excluding people from groups, and name calling, and being really hurtful. Girls tend to do social bullying more than boys, but boys do it too. Cyberbullying, obviously, and verbal bullying, which is just like name calling and making remarks and things like that.
And then what are the signs of bullying?
Well, some of the things that a parent or teacher might notice is that the child might be reluctant to go to recess and say, I'd rather not, I don't want to go, and most kids like recess. Or don't want to go to school because they're worried about a certain person. If the child is complaining that, people don't like me, or, they're reluctant to talk about what's happening at school, then it's possible that something like that is going on. Again, it's really about the parent having a good relationship and trying to communicate with the child, or the teacher, whoever notices it, trying to encourage the child to come forward. Sometimes I find out about bullying situations from other kids who come forward on that child's behalf, which is wonderful. I mean, we have some very kind kids at the Cumming School, and if they see somebody being treated badly, it hurts them too. And so I had one incident this year where some kids came forward and said that someone in their class was being mean to another kid in the class, and it was very upsetting to them. And I told them I really appreciated them coming forward, and that we would look into it and we would take care of the situation, and we did. So, so sometimes if the child shares that with a friend, the friend could come forward as well and on their behalf.
So kids might, or you might think that they might be tattling.
Yeah, well, we tell kids there's a different, tattling is when you tell a teacher or an adult on something that doesn't concern you, and that's not a harmful behavior. For instance, if a child sees another child chewing gum, and goes and tells the teacher, that's tattling, because the gum chewing doesn't concern them and it's not dangerous. Okay, the child's breaking the rules, but it's nothing that's unsafe, okay? If that child is hitting you or, bothering you, poking you, or making it difficult for you to get your work done, then you need to tell, because it involves you and it's affecting you and it's being hurtful. So we always tell kids that I always tell them, if the behavior is hurting you in some way, it's making you feel bad about yourself, or it's physically hurting you, then you need to tell an adult. Or if what they're doing is unsafe, you see somebody doing something like playing with matches, you need to tell an adult because it's unsafe and someone could get hurt. Right. That's not telling, that's keeping everyone safe. That's when you need to tell an adult.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. You are also an author now. Why did you want to write these books, I'm Sad and I Miss You, and Mondays Are Really Hard?
Well, I've been doing this for a number of years, and I have a lot of resources I've gathered over the years to help children. Two of the main things that are referred to me are when a child loses someone in their family, or it might be a pet, but or a lot of times a grandparent or other loved one, and they're struggling with the grief, or a child is struggling with anxiety and is having a hard time coming to school. Those are probably the two most common things that are referred to me. So I didn't have anything that, any books or anything that exactly talked about it the way I do when I work with the kids. And so I decided to write something that I could use with my students, and that maybe other people could use with their own children or their students if they're counselors, to address those two issues. I'd like to do a series of them. In fact, I'm planning now to write one on friendship issues. And I believe that in the back of each of my books, there's a list of some of the up-and-coming, the ones I plan to do in the future. Why are my friends so mean sometimes? Another one would be my parents live apart and I hate it, all about divorce issues. And I get so mad on anger management. So these are all different topics, things that I work with children on. And I thought that writing little workbooks would be a helpful way to do that. And these are written so that a child could read it and do the activities themselves, or a parent could read it with their child. And at the end, I have a few websites that are helpful, that are geared towards children, that a child could go on the website themselves and get some assistance, really geared at children, probably first grade to sixth grade, something in that range. But a younger child could use it as well if the parent were reading it to them or with them and so forth. The illustrations are by my sister, Denise Stanley. She lives in Florida. Yeah, she did all the illustrations, and we left the illustrations in drawing form so kids could color them to add to the activities of the book and make them very personalized.
Oh, nice.
So far, I'm Sad and I Miss You on grief issues. It came out on Amazon last September. And then Mondays Are Really Hard, which is about school anxiety, came out just a few weeks ago on Amazon. They're both available on Amazon.com. If you just Google my name or look up under the title, you should be able to find it there. And it's also on an ebook, Kindle ebook, as well.
Great. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And stuff. So getting back to the grieving, how do you work with children that might be going through grieving?
Well, I think it's important to know that children grieve differently than adults do. Children tend to grieve in little spurts. If you've ever known a child who's lost somebody in their family, you might think that they're not fazed by it because they seem perfectly normal. They're doing their regular child things, and they seem happy and doing whatever, and people might say, oh, I don't think it really bothered her at all. But in fact, what happens is that, first of all, depending on the age of the child, they may not understand that death is permanent. Young children really do think that you can come back to life. So that's the first issue. The second thing is that it may not really hit them until it's been some time and they haven't seen that person. And then all of a sudden they may realize, well, they really are gone, and I haven't seen them in a long time, and now I miss them. A lot of times the initial grieving is in regards to seeing other people crying. They see mom and dad crying, or they see relatives crying, and so they might start crying because they're upset because other people are upset. And the whole process of wakes and funerals and people coming around can be very stressful to kids because they don't really understand what's happening, and they don't know all of the people that they're seeing and so forth. So I tried to explain death in a way that children could understand without dealing with the religious piece of it. The way I explain it is that when you have your hand inside a mitten, the mitten moves because your hand is inside. But if you take the mitten off, the mitten just lays there. It doesn't move anymore because the part that made it move is out of it. So when a person dies, their body is there, but the part that made them move is not there anymore. So it's just like an empty mitten. There's nothing there. It doesn't have any feelings. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't move because the part that made it move is gone. And I think that makes it a little easier for children to understand that, because sometimes when they know that somebody died, they think they might be sleeping, or they get confused and wonder why they don't just wake up. And when people use terms like, so we lost so-and-so, young children might take that to mean like they're lost, like we need to find them, as opposed to lost in the other sense. So it's very important for parents and caregivers to use death and died, not passed away or lost, because those words can take it on a different meaning. The child might not understand what you're saying. So be very clear. And I think it's important that families share as much as possible about what their traditions are, so the child will know what's happening, explain what's going to happen if there's a church ceremony, or if there's a wake, or if there's going to be some sort of get-together. Explain all of that stuff to the child so they have some idea of what's going on. I used my book with a little boy who lost his grandparent, and we read the book together, and it was before he was going to the wake and funeral. And when he came back, he told me, he said, "Mrs. Prebble's just like you told me it was going to be." And he said, "But I have one question. How come there were so many people there I don't know?" And so I explained to him that those people were probably relatives that hadn't been around in a while, or people that Grandpa worked with, or you know what I mean? So the other question he had for me was, if he went to the wake, was he going to see skeleton? Because, children don't know. And I said, no, it wouldn't be a skeleton. If he did go, and I didn't know if he was going to be going or not, I said, but when a person has died, they look like themselves, and they're usually dressed up in something nice, and they look like they're sleeping, but remember, it's just an empty mitten. They're not breathing, they don't feel anything, because that can be very scary. I think it's unnerving for adults to see somebody at a wake, but for a child especially. So, but he found a lot of comfort in that. We went through talking about good memories of the person. I always encourage children when they're grieving to tell me all about the person who died, and the fun things they did together, and how they can remember that person. So, we might talk about making a memory box, putting pictures and little things that remind them of that person in that box, or planting some flowers or a tree or something in that person's name, or doing activities they used to do with that person as a way to remember them and keep them alive in their heart and their mind and so forth. So I think it's all about helping them to keep those good memories and to not focus on the death part of it or the sickness or whatever was going on at the end. So what happens is sometimes a child will be grieving and they'll come down crying, and I let them cry as much as they need to, and we'll talk a little bit, but then after 10 minutes or so, they feel better, and then they're able to go back to class or do whatever they're doing. I might not see them for another week, and then something might spur their memory. They might hear something or see something that reminds them of their loved one, and they'll start crying. It comes and goes, just like it does with adults, but children are more expressive. They can't control it, so when the tears come, they just come. And so they just need a little time to work through that, and then they can go on their way. They just can't hold on to those hard emotions for any length of time. They sort of do a little bit of grieving and let it go, and then do a little bit of grieving and so forth. And then as they get older too, they have a different understanding of death, and they may revisit that grief because now they have a different understanding of death and loss and so forth.
Okay. If anyone has any questions, can you please give us your contact info?
Sure, I can be reached anytime at the Cummings School at apreble@winthrop.k12.ma.us.
Okay.
That's my email. Feel free to write with any questions you might have about my books or the Winthrop Parents Network, how to get involved, or any of the topics we discussed tonight.
Okay, great, Anita. I'm sorry, but that's all the time that we have. Anita, thank you for all you do for the children. I would love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. Please send them to lifeissuestv@gmail.com. And remember, live each day to the fullest and celebrate life.
According to Reading is Fundamental, 93 million adults in the U.S. read at or below the basic level needed to contribute successfully to society. Early access to books and time spent being read to by adults during the preschool years is the best predictor of academic success in elementary school. Funded through the Department of Early Education and Care, Coordinated Family and Community Engagement Grant, the Winthrop Parents Network promotes early literacy and parenting skills and helps families to develop social connections and gain access to resources in the community. At our Learn and Play groups, children have an opportunity to socialize and do preschool activities which prepares them for school, while parents learn about their child's development and how to promote it at home. The early years are crucial to brain development. The earlier children are introduced to literacy, the better they do when they get to school. If you are interested in joining the Winthrop Parents Network or would like more information, please contact us at 617-846-5543, extension 4562, or email winthropparentsnetwork12@gmail.com.